Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer and the Hello Humans podcast. That's right, the show that is not hosted by an annoying e-beggar. There are no Patreons and no Super Chats. That's right, we just talk about the games we love, interesting topics, and bring on very special guests. Now, with that said, let's get ready for the show. Pump up the volume, and here we go. Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Channels. Usually at this point, I say the name of the guest, and I say that they need no introduction. But in this case, they do, because you guys have been debating how to spell his name, how to write his name, how to pronounce all his handles. So let me introduce you to our next guest. He's a prolific writer. He's behind books like Veganism, The Future of Illusion, and No More Manifestos. So now I'll let him introduce himself. Our next guest will make you think and will make you triggered, especially if you love video games way too much.
That's a fantastic introduction. I couldn't ask for more, except that you didn't attempt to pronounce my name. Now, okay, you and I both fall into the boomer category in 2023. Mm-hmm. But let me just say, for those of you who are maybe 10, 20 years older than myself, anytime there's a word in a foreign language you can't pronounce, Google Translate is your friend. You know, guys, all the time, news broadcasters, you know, the current leader of China, Xi Jinping. Nobody can pronounce Xi Jinping. They pronounce his name Zhu Rongjing or whatever. They get it like all syllables wrong. You think, don't they know you can go to Google Translate, copy and paste the foreign word, put it in, and press go. So you will get, if you go to Google Translate, you'll get a robotic female computer voice. À-bas-le-ciel. That is how the name is pronounced in French. Yeah. And yeah, the creation of my channel, the ultimate origin of the channel, was a brief time in my life when I thought I was going to settle down in France and live more or less permanently in France as a French citizen. Now, France and the French language, it turns out to have not been that big a part of my life, but the YouTube channel, it's been a big part of my life. And for a couple of years, I'd have intros and outros that had specifically a robot voice. It was the voice built into the Mac operating system. It wasn't Google Translate, telling you how to pronounce it. À-bas-le-ciel. We did that in the intro and outro. But I mean, you're not going to do it for 8 years. I've now been rolling heavy with YouTube for 8 years. But yeah, that's my background. And every so often, people denounce me for being French, which I find hilarious. You can tell right away I have no French background to speak of. But yes, when people want to hate you, they'll come up with reasons to hate you, including how French you are, how French you may or may not be.
Yeah, you know, I go right. Spanish is my first language, and I tell people this, and very few believe me. I actually think in Spanish most of the time when I'm talking to myself or whatever. So whenever I read something that's not recognizable to me, I go right to Spanish. So I read it in Spanish. So I got close, but no, no cigar.
Yeah, but anyway. Spanish is a very appealing language to me. I just mentioned briefly. I'm tempted to learn Spanish right now. Whether or not I give into temptation, we'll see. And I have a lot of Spanish-speaking friends. Both of my books, which thank you for mentioning, they're both being translated into Spanish right now. One of the translators, the last time he wrote to me, he said, it's 95% done. And I said, we can publish when you get to 97. But yeah, actually, I have enough Spanish-speaking viewers that I have a separate Spanish language channel.
Oh, wow.
Derivar el Cielo or something. I don't know the Spanish name of my own Spanish channel. And my books are being translated to Spanish. But yeah, it is tempting to me. I'll tell you, the worst thing about Spanish is the way it screws up your spelling. Because there's so many Spanish words, they're similar to English in meaning and sound. But the spelling conventions are different. I could imagine if you grew up bilingual English and Spanish, it wouldn't be understanding English that's hard. But spelling it accurately, it's that's
you know, really it's I mean, you speak several languages, right? So one of the things that I try to tell my friends, and it's something hard to understand, is in Spanish there's different accents, and people will judge you by your accent right away. If you don't pronounce certain Spanish words correctly, if you don't have the right accent. So I grew up in several countries very young, so I have the ability to make different accents depending on who I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
Right. And then, sometimes they tell me, oh, you're faking your voice. And I'm like, no, 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 no. If I'm down in Mexico, I want to make sure that
into a Mexican
yes,
accent. Yeah.
if
Right.
not, everything gets more expensive really, really quick. Number one.
When I was in Thailand, the last several times I was in Thailand, I spoke enough Thai to get the lower price that Thai people get, which is hilarious. Shows you don't have to be that fluent in Thai to get that. But anyway, that's you switch registers.
When I go to the Philippines, I can't do it because I get the foreigner tax because I look like this,
Right.
But yeah, it just traveling always gives you a different perspective. There's several things that I wanted
to mention about that with Spanish. I don't know. Have you spent time in continental Spain and European Spain? Because that's even true within Spain. That this judgment of accent.
Oh yes, yes.
So I just mentioned how wealthy you are and which province you're from within Spain.
Yes.
And then they also judge you like, do you sound like you're from Colombia? Do you sound like you're from South America? So yes. I know Spanish. It's very, very judgmental.
In the Spanish, I have an uncle that's Spanish, right? He married my aunt. My aunt went to Spain for about 2 years, right? She spoke regular, just Castellan, which we call the Spanish in America. So she came back with an accent from Spain, right? Full on, and we're like, come on. We've been here in the U.S. for 20 years. We haven't lost our accent. But yeah, there's certain regions that she didn't want to talk to because she would say she even acquired the discriminatory mannerisms of her husband. She would say people from these region are like this.
Right. And those people from Valencia. Yeah. They don't speak Spanish at all. This kind of thing. Yeah. The closest I lived to Spain was in Perpignan. So Perpignan is right on the border, and historically it was part of Spain in the past, but it's now part of France. It's one of those disputed border regions. Yeah. During that time, I was interested in learning both the local minority language, and I looked at Spanish too, obviously. So I didn't know to what extent Perpignan and Barcelona and Catalan would be part of my life. And anyone who Googles my name, most of the people who hate me don't actually Google my name. They make up bad things about me. There are a lot of bad things about me I've written myself on the internet. But there's actually, if you Google my name plus Catalan, you actually see evidence of back when I was studying Catalan. So as you know, Catalan is a separate language, but it is very similar to both Spanish and French. And that's a political struggle as much as anything else right now in that part of the world. So yeah, it's been a little part of my life. But at this point, I would describe myself as speaking absolutely zero Spanish. So it would be a totally new language for me to embark on. But yeah, in some ways, tempting. You gave me some really great advice. This is a great example of advice that goes unasked for, where I made a video talking about my own insane sex life. And you took me aside and said, yeah, but you aren't dating Cuban women. Yeah. You don't have experience Latin American. You're like, this stuff you're talking about. No. If you were in Mexico, it gets more dangerous. It gets crazy. Yeah, it was eye-opening for me. I was like, you know what? He's got a point. It's true. I've never been romantically involved with anyone Hispanic in the broadest, neither Spain nor Colombia nor anything in between. So.
Yeah, and I forgot the context of what we're talking about, but you were saying something, and I remembered a situation where somebody pulled a knife on me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I thought about it. And I thought, well, it could get worse. It definitely could get worse.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the reasons I watch your channel, because it's so varied, you have content of so many different things, right? And different points of views. And I like watching channels that make me think and challenge a lot of the perceptions that I have, some of things we don't think about. Right. And, one of the reasons that probably the first reason I wanted to have you on is because you actually spoke to Tommy Tallarico.
Yes.
Right. I've never spoken to the man. I've criticized his work, but I've never had conversations with him, what's gone on this week.
Right. Well, just to start with, it's interesting that he spoke to me at all. I made a video somewhere talking about really that I hate the Nintendo Switch. And I'll mention very briefly, I am a parent. I have not seen my daughter for several years, partly due to coronavirus and partly due to the vagaries of the French legal system. But I'm in Canada, my daughter's in France. But Switch has been around for more than 5 years now. You know, at different times as a parent, I've had to look at, am I going to buy my daughter a Switch? Am I going to buy her a 3DS? Just different options for video games for my daughter. Anyway, as I recall, you know, it was one of the videos I made really saying, look, I hate the Nintendo Switch so much that I'd be willing to give the Intellivision Amico a chance, and here's why. And it was, now look, so again, somebody could look back at that and say you're damning the Intellivision with faint praise, which I think I was. I mean, like, that's, you know what I mean? I'm not saying this is going to be a great system. This was way back. This was no. This would have been 2019 that I made that video. I honestly don't know if it's still on my channel or not. If it's still on, I should delete it. But anyway, Tommy, you know, he's one of these guys. I've known other guys like this. He only hears the flattering part. You know what I mean? Like, really, that video, it's saying like, okay, Intellivision Amico, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. But, you know, if you're a parent in this kind of position. So I just mentioned too, some people in the audience may relate to this, some may not. If you're a parent, it's possible you don't want your kid playing massively multiplayer online games. Like, you want, in the problems of times, you want quote unquote crippleware. You want software and hardware that can't do certain things that the Xbox can do and PlayStation can do. Now, just to mention, today in 2022, 2023, there are actually many, many options. The à-bas-le-ciel exists. The Evercade exists. Each one with its own advantages and disadvantages. You could buy a whole bunch. I know you now own at least one Arcade 1-Up.
Yes.
My point, well, also, you know, the At-Games Legends arcade, you could actually give your kid a whole fabulous arcade, including pinball machines now and stuff. But you're actually cutting them off from World of Warcraft. You're cutting them off from EverQuest. You're cutting them off from some of those games that are a real.
That's such a great point that actually I've never thought about, that you could actually do that, you know, and
right. Well, that's the funny thing, right? In a sense, you're cutting your kid off from video games, but it's by providing them with video games.
Yes.
And there's video games that don't have to feel ashamed of. If your kid has a big, beautiful, you could mod an IR arcade or a Arcade 1-Up with these impressive joysticks and lights on it and stuff. When their friends come over, they don't have to feel like, oh, can't play the same game you play because I'm poor. Which is the main thing that goes on in our society. It was like that with NES. You know, I remember I grew up both with 8-bit and 16-bit. You know, if you didn't have the video games the other kids were playing, the assumption was because your family was too poor and you were insulted and denigrated for this. You know, you can give your kid video games in a way that makes them feel affluent, frankly, doesn't make them feel ashamed of themselves, but at the same time, in reality, what you're cutting them off from is the danger of certain kinds of addictive and gambling-based and other video games. Now, again, sorry, it's interesting. You said you hadn't thought of that. Your kids, what video game generation did they grow up in? You have a bunch of kids that are already adults, right? So
yes, they grew up.
Sega Saturn generation, they grew up or something.
Yeah, I mean, my son, PlayStation. You know, the girls played PlayStation, and the Nintendo 64. I mean, that's what they really remember of their childhood. My son just grew up playing video games. He's playing video games as we speak, and he's got 2 kids. You know?
Right. Well, I'm just saying, Nintendo 64. If you play Tetris on the Nintendo 64, it's really not that different from Tetris on an 8-bit system.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the conventions for video games hadn't changed. But in the current era, I just say I think that's a real legit concern for parents. And for you, whoever you are watching this, for some people, maybe a concern for yourself. You don't want to end up like Boogie 2988. You don't want to end up addicted to World of Warcraft or whatever the current generation's equivalent to World of Warcraft is. You can, you know what I mean? You can limit your addiction by buying something into the systems. So I just mentioned the beginning of my conversation with Tom Tallarico. He saw that YouTube video. He used a clip of me speaking. I didn't know this. Nobody told me. I mean, Tommy didn't tell me. Nobody else told me. He used a clip of me speaking in one of his advertising videos. Other people have pointed out this is technically illegal. You know, in an advertising video, you have to get people's permission. But whatever. I only found out later when Tommy started talking to me. So he knew me. He knew my channel. And then understandably, he became somewhat fascinated with me because of my politically contrarian views and because I'm vegan. So this is something that's not a secret, but isn't talked about that much. Tommy Tallarico is vegan, and he is somewhere on the Republican conservative end of the spectrum. Now, I know because of some things he said on Twitter and his friendship with the creator of Earthworm Jim.
Yeah.
There have been some moments that kind of exposed his political views. I'm not condemning him for this, by the way. I just mentioned in a world where every detail about the doomed career of Tommy Tallarico has been examined, his veganism and his political views are the least examined parts of the story.
Yeah, it's not until now, in this world, and I have to say about the few criticisms that you would have on the video that was made, because you could clearly tell this person's political leanings from making the video, but there was a section there where he says, well, he follows white supremacists, and then he shows people of color there. That's fucking ridiculous, to the rest of the planet, I mean, Dave Chappelle made a skit about the black white supremacists, right? But everybody has a right to their political opinions, and it is what it is. His business practice.
Oh, look, let's be real. If the Intellivision Amico had shipped complete in box in October of 2020, nobody would be questioning his political views.
No.
It's when you fuck up that people start. Also, I mean, his religious views. He said some crazy things about believing in, manifesting through the universe. This kind of stereotypical hippie. And the secret and manifesting your dreams. But my point is, this is also said about Dov Charney. So if you guys don't know who Dov Charney is, his first name is spelled D-O-V. Anyway, but Dov Charney, as long as he was successful in business, as long as he was giving back dividends to the investors, nobody had any questions about his sex life. Nobody had any questions about his political views. Oh, he's a little bit eccentric, but when he starts fucking up, when his company is, there's the possibility of bankruptcy, when now we got, now it's controversial, there's no doubt. I have no reason to think Tommy's political views are worth thinking about, frankly.
I mean,
I just don't. But we're thinking about it. We're talking about it because everything else has been a disaster, and so many bizarre lies and so much deception has been revealed in other areas. That
for me, just thinking about businesses, the shame here is that he could have made so much money, absolutely so much money. If he could have just had a simpler system and he just basically wanted to flip the company, right? He was right at the beginning of crypto. He could have made NFTs of anything. He could have made NFTs of the Running Man and put them up for sale for $100.
Astro Smash NFTs.
And
for every asteroid.
Yeah, he could have cashed in
implicitly. You said something there really quickly that I think we agree about, and that most of your viewers will disagree. Most people see this video will disagree about. One of the main criticisms of the Intellivision from day one was that there was no point in making a console that has nothing but a cell phone processor inside it. I own several consoles that have nothing but a cell phone processor inside it. I own a cell phone. I got it secondhand for next to nothing, but it was a flagship cell phone that sold for over $1,000 when it was new. Cell phone processors are unbelievably amazing. It's just ridiculous. I just could say, you just said if you could have kept it simple and gotten it. I think you can right now, or certainly back in 2020, a couple of years ago, I think you could have a hit console that is no more technologically advanced than a cell phone in terms of what's there. The challenge is, can you make the software that brings it to life?
Yes.
That's the creative arts side of it. But it's an interesting thing. People are kind of in denial about just how powerful cellular phones now are. You can do all your word processing on your cell phone. You could record this video right now on your cell phone. You can edit video on your cell phone. The problem is the interface. The problem is the software development. But by the same token, as I said, I own a retro console that literally is a cell phone processor chip. But if I ever want to sit down and play Sega Genesis or what have you, it can emulate that flawlessly. I'm pretty sure my Neo Geo arcade stick, it's probably as powerful as a Motorola cell phone from 2012. There's very, very little power there, but it can do Neo Geo. So that's all I'd say is that in that sense, I don't think the Intellivision Amico was doomed from day one. Now, you want to look at this in terms of business. 2020 is not 2023.
Yeah.
I actually think the window of opportunity is closing or maybe it's now already
it's closed. Yeah, it's closed.
I think, when did the first the at-games Sega Genesis mini come out? That was maybe 2018. I mean, it goes back a few years.
Yeah.
That was really the moment. And again, I'm sure the processor within the at-games Genesis is less powerful than a Motorola cell phone, or it's not even comparable to a selection. But there was an opportunity, maybe of 5 years, where you could have had a great console, could have had a great success. You could have, let's put it this way, let's calibrate it. You could have had something more successful than the at-games Sega Genesis.
Absolutely.
Look at which, by the way, sold how many millions did it sell?
Yeah, like, I mean, look at the mini consoles.
I own one. Everyone bought one. Yeah. We all complained it wasn't good enough, but everyone fucking bought one. So anyway, that's all I'd say on that level. When you think about hardware and software, just say, like, you think about this in terms of the book publishing industry. If you say to me, look, Eisel, why are you buying this printing press that's 100 years old? You're not going to be able to compete with a publishing company that has a leading edge, brand new printing press. No, nobody gives a fuck. I might be more successful with a 100-year-old, less powerful, like the actual press, the actual ink, the actual binding. And when you buy a book, you're not looking at it that way. You're not looking at it saying, oh, well, how many DPI is the text? That's all I'd say. Yeah. So in that sense, I was an optimist. But I have to say, by the same token, that window, it's either a closing or it's already closed.
Yeah, the money in the market is run out. But talking about the market and talking about these products, you made an observation 9 months ago, and I posted a clip of this, which was that both Tommy Tallarico and Zuckerberg had the same problem, basically.
This is an interesting thing with human nature, right? Like, people delude themselves about certain things when sex is involved. They delude themselves about certain things when religion is involved. But when money's involved, I think the predominant delusion is it's going to be easy for me to do better than the best competition in the world. Like, people talk about, oh, yeah, look at what Starbucks is doing. I'm going to be able to open a coffee shop and do better. Really? Yeah. Like, by the way, Starbucks may suck. Like, I understand you go to Starbucks and think this is terrible, I can do better. I understand that. Okay. But you really have to use sympathy as an analytical tool and think about how hard it is for Starbucks to achieve and maintain the standards that they achieve and maintain, right? And there's a crazy delusion there. Like, oh yeah, we can do better than Nintendo, no problem. Can you? Even just talking software, leave out everything else. Can you? But in terms of hardware, the example I like to use is Hori. So if you guys don't know the brand name, Hori. Hori, currently they are the best joystick manufacturer in the world with the best reputation. Mm-hmm. What percentage of their products are garbage? Like stuff that's currently available on Amazon. It's a very high percentage. Mm-hmm. Now, many of you in the audience, you won't be thinking of that. You'll think, oh, what do you mean? All their products are great. No, they have a failure rate. There's a significant failure rate even with the simplest kind of hardware development. Okay, you get into software development, whether you're talking about the OS, the firmware, the games. Woo, you think it's easy to, and again, Nintendo has a pretty high failure rate. Did you like Mario Strikers Football?
I didn't even buy it, no.
Right. My point is, when you actually look at the list of titles developed by Nintendo, what's their batting average? What's their hit to failure ratio? Okay, that's Nintendo. You're gonna do better.
Yeah, and they they clearly couldn't.
But that's what money does to people. Yeah. Money makes people think they're going to be better than the best in the world effortlessly. Go on,
yeah. There's so much to break down when it comes to the Intellivision Amico. Not only the product itself, but the people involved. There was this whole phenomenon where Tommy Tallarico was actually more important than the console, right? Yeah. He was featured on everything, and the people promoting it. I mean, we're talking about business to this day. I just have to. I'm making videos on these undisclosed investors. Like you don't know the rhyme or reason, right? If you're an investor in a company, you can get yourself into some real hot water promoting products that you invest in and not telling the public. And this is happening like it's no tomorrow, right? And when people talk about cults. It's not insulting anybody, like a whole group of people, but it's the actual people that do shit like this. This is way above and beyond normal. Like, who the hell does this? Nobody.
Yeah. Well, you said a very simple thing, though. It's true. It became all about Tommy Tallarico and not about the console. But that's because he wanted it that way. I'll just give you an example. Beyonce Knowles, with any given album release, is it about the music, or is it about how beautiful she is, or is it about something else about her personally? However it's marketed, she wanted it that way. If she wanted you to think, oh, wow, she's coming with the best rhymes, or, oh, wow, she's really stepped up as a singer-songwriter. She's really the Bob Dylan of her generation now. That's how it would have been promoted, right? Bob Dylan doesn't have his ass on the front of Cosmopolitan magazine. But if Beyonce wants you to think she's a sex symbol, that's how it is. So just say, in that sense, it was a choice. And, he's very alien from me, Tommy. Obviously, he made the wrong choice. I mean, there aren't really two sides of the conversation. But to me, that decision, that's very, very alien. And again, I could compare it to anything. We can compare it to book publishing. Let's compare it also to, what if I want to open a stand-up comedy club? Like, I'm the owner and the manager. It's not my sense of humor every night. Every night there's a different stand-up comedian or whatever. Every week there's a different act. It can't be about me and my personality, right? Like, the venue is different from the talent. Right?
Exactly.
Well, guys, nobody is going to buy this console, not even because they like Tommy Tallarico's music, because each game is going to have a different soundtrack, and there's going to be a different. So there are some really weird, deep, strategic misconceptions there that I personally don't sympathize with.
Yeah, one thing that you, to keep on the gamer thing, one thing that you featured on the channel is the negative effects of video games and what they have on young people specifically, right? But on people in general. When I say, listen, these games, the shitload of games that I have over here, this shit's not normal, right?
Yeah.
I know I make people uncomfortable, but I know that. I know I have an addictive personality, right? And of all the things that I've been addicted to in my life, video games is the least harmful, right? At least these fuckers are going up in value, right? Now, for those of you who don't know,
you don't have some wet cocaine in the closet that's going up in value.
Yeah. This gentleman has traveled more than I have, and we've been in the same countries for completely different reasons, right?
Yeah.
He's been out there in the humanitarian, and I've been, just spilling liquor. I spent more money on spilt liquor than most people do on the plane flight, but
I think that
I know that
conversation. It's a conversation everybody has to have. It's partly about video games, but it's partly about regret itself. Are you willing to look back at your life and regret things? And in this culture, I basically mean English-speaking, white, Western culture, America, England, United States. People are very reluctant to regret anything. And I think that's a deeper kind of sickness. Now, I'll use video games as my first example, but my point is, it's not unique this way. It's very easy for me to look back at the significance video games had in my life and to say, hey, there's a better person I could be today if I hadn't been playing video games during those years. Now, it's also easy to look at Boogie2988. I'm just mentioning a YouTuber as an example. Yeah. Look at his life and say, hey, there's a better person he could be today if he hadn't played video games, or if he had quit at this point, if he had quit at this point, if he quit at this point. Really extreme examples of people, ruining their lives that way. Yeah. Now, look, cocaine is more extreme. Obviously, there are a lot of people, whether it's cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, meth, whatever, you can say, oh, yeah, there's a better person they could be today if they hadn't done this, that made this compromise. But I'm just pointing out, on a really elemental level, are you willing to think that way? Are you willing to question that? Most people aren't.
I have friends right now, right? I have friends right now that play way too much. And I know I make them uncomfortable when I tell them this stuff. I have a lot of video games, but I don't spend my time playing video games. I wouldn't make any money.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I wouldn't. I spent 7 hours on YouTube and probably, 5-6 hours on video games whenever I can. I'd rather pick up something to, just pick up and play. But I wanted to get your perspectives on this, because kind of this stuff just boils all together, right? We're talking about how these behaviors with video games can be very harmful, you know, and I know that's triggering people, but you can overdo anything, right? But YouTube rewards that behavior. Let's talk about Boogie 2988. Let's talk about DSP, right? Could they be different people? Yes. But if you were playing video games and making $120,000 a year, $100,000 a year, and snorting on stream and begging on stream, but you're piling up the cash, what's the incentive, right?
Right.
There's no incentive to change.
But let me say this too, because this is going to impact more people you know in your lives. A very tiny number of people achieve the level of fame of Boogie 2988. Okay, what if you're a 16-year-old kid and there are just 3 women per month getting in touch with you, wanting to have sex with you because of your YouTube channel or because of your Twitch channel, whichever, or because of your TikTok, because you're social, because of whatever kind of filmmaking you do. When you're a 16-year-old male, and these will be 3 women of all different, some of them will be single moms, they'll be soccer moms trying to fuck you, you know, whatever. What impact does that have? My point is, at the low end, where it's a very small amount of money, or I mean, I can't say a small amount of sex. What is a small amount of sex? I mean, you know, having 3 options you otherwise wouldn't have in your sex life, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for anybody. It's a big deal for us all. Yeah, it's not just Boogie 2988. It's not just PewDiePie. At the low end, and a lot of people start doing this at 16, whether it's 16 or 18 or what have you. Most of the attention has been paid to women because we view women as passive victims of this stuff. But men are neither more nor less corruptible. I mean, in this sense, the genders are equal. Everyone's thought through, though, the scenario of, okay, what if you're talking about an 18-year-old girl and the financial reward and the ego trip of her getting in a bikini on the internet, or maybe taking the bikini off on the internet, is so great it becomes irresistible. Well, do you know how little money, how little fame, how little power, how little sex becomes irresistible to a 16-year-old male?
Yeah.
When perhaps in the rest of his life, you know, there's nothing much for him to enjoy at all. And the rest of his life may be more or less miserable. The rest of his life is getting yelled at by his father, being told he's not smart enough by his school teacher, you know, what have you, you fill it in.
Yeah. I mean, I started working when I was 14 as a baker and a cashier. Shit, if I could have been playing video games and getting paid, I probably would have chosen that, because that job sucked. But
and what if it's doing crazy stunts on the street? That hasn't been on the internet lately, but I remember a few years ago. I don't know. It's you throw a Coke can at someone's head and they fall down a staircase. Okay, well, I know you used to work on the docks. You used to load heavy sacks of concrete on and off of boats or whatever down the docks. Okay, well, I could be putting my time and energy into making these comedy videos. Right. So it can have a profound effect on people's lives when the amount of money is next to nothing. Yeah, now, that's the point or the warning I would want to make, is that it's not just at that end of the high end of people making millions of dollars.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and I really want to ask you this question for a lot of viewers of mine that are pursuing to be YouTubers, right? And they think they do all these things to get 1,000 subscribers. They think that this is, you know, once you hit 1,000, the money truck is just going to back up, and their lives is going to change, you know, substantially, right? Because now they have another source of income. But the numbers don't bear that, right? But I can sit here all day and try to tell people that, and, you know, try to show them other options. But I think it's better if they hear it from somebody who has 13,000 subscribers, right?
Right.
And how does it change, right? Is the brink truck coming, you know, every week and dumping bags of money? You know? So
look, you have to calibrate these claims. Just say, compare it to someone, contextualize it. I have a friend who's an aspiring artist. She drew the cover for the book you held up. She's the painter or artist who drew that portrait of me. Okay. How many hours does she have to work to make a painting that will hang on the wall? It may be exhibited in an art gallery where it gets seen by 30 people, 50 people, and then one person buys it and then it disappears. And it's, once someone buys it, it's not like a YouTube video that people can see anytime. Who knows what they do with it? But they put it in their closet, they put it in the boardroom, they put it in the bedroom. You know, people buy a painting and it goes away. It disappears somewhere. One painting, 100 hours? Like, you tell me. I mean, it depends on the painting. 50 hours? You know, now, so look, I know you've said recently you try to limit yourself to something like 7 hours of work a week on YouTube or something. You have some number of hours you put in, and you don't want to put in more.
Because it doesn't make financial sense for me, right? After 7 hours, I'll start losing money.
Here's the point. If you do oil paintings for 7 hours, you have nothing to show for it and no audience, right? So the level of commitment, the amount of input and the amount of output, when you compare it to some of this, that's when it starts to get interesting. Now, we can talk about book publishing. You write a book. What's the audience you really reach? How much ever? So in that sense, I am optimistic about YouTube. Like, I can say to someone like you, look, if there's something you have to express about the meaning of life, if there's something you want to accomplish politically, personally, emotionally, intellectually, whatever it is, well, on YouTube, you know, maybe 50 people are going to see it and care about it, you know, and 50 is not nothing. It's not, it matters.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you something, if you want to paint a picture, if you want to play the guitar, you know, hundreds and hundreds of hours and an outcome that's very uncertain and maybe zero. Just one more comparison with YouTube. I used to know a lot of people with PhDs. I was married to a woman with PhDs. I used to roll in more ostentatiously scholarly field. All idiots. Every single one of them. Some of you guys are watching. Some of you guys with PhDs are watching thinking, he's not talking about me. Yes, I am, bitch. No exceptions. All idiots. I didn't meet a single real intellectual. Didn't meet a single intelligent person with a PhD. I still don't know. You're all morons. But anyway, I used to know all these people with PhDs. How many hundred hours did they put into preparing a lecture, a conference paper delivered at a conference? How many people saw it or heard it, and how many people appreciated it? So in that sense, YouTube is a good deal for you as a creator. Like, YouTube is a good deal for you in your life, what you want to do with the next 5 years and what you're going to look back on 5 years from now. But the money is symbolic. The money is I mean, it's like an achievement you unlock in a video game. You know, the money, it's not nothing, but it is symbolic. And that's it. I mean, there's nothing else to say about it. And I've posted publicly how much money I make many, many times. I sent you a link before this where I gave the screenshot and the breakdown of how much money came in. So,
give me a second. I got a knock on the door. Just give me a second real quick.
Cool. So at this point, I'll do Q&A with the audience. No? Do we have any questions coming in? Send in your questions and I'll answer while he's answering the door. Or should I get up and leave also? Is that better? Okay, so good question. How much did that robe cost and where did you get it? This is the same robe that is worn by the famous YouTuber Hamza, and I got it off of Amazon for about $65. So it is quite expensive, but if any of you want to impersonate Hamza, the exact same robe is available on Amazon. Doing Q&A with the audience. Go on.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, that was my son. Geez. You know, now that you bring up those YouTubers, this is how I found your channel.
Yeah,
I would look at Vegan's Gains videos way back in the day when he was doing the costumes, you know, and the worst of the fitness industry videos.
He used to do scripted drama. It's a long time ago.
Yes, and now it's so different. He also used to play video games.
Well, and he destroyed his life now. Now all he does is play video games. Go on,
yeah. And I started watching your critiques of him.
Yeah.
Right. And in the back and forth. And when it comes to YouTube drama that seems to sell a lot, right? Nowadays, where people just, you know, do combat videos or whatever, you have actually gone to court over this stuff.
Yep.
So you've been to the extreme, like stuff that nobody ever does. How did that come about?
Well, okay, look, I talked about regret earlier.
Yeah.
Another question is, do I regret it? I came into YouTube playing by a very different set of rules than I play by now. So I'll give you an example of something that didn't upset me at all, where I didn't threaten to sue anyone, where it was no big deal to me. There used to be a news channel. I know this is hard to believe. They were a news channel that covered gossip and drama within the vegan community. And they got more views than I did. At that time, there were 2 YouTube channels doing this. And I remember discussing this with my Chinese teacher in China, in Chinese. I was practicing Chinese, talking about my own life. One was called Joe Vegan, and the other was called Vegan Cheetah. And Joe Vegan, he got his start. All these videos have disappeared, and I didn't keep copies of them. He got his start doing an impersonation of me, doing a comedic impression of me. I'm not joking. Like I was famous enough within that demimonde that he pretended to have my accent, and he told these stories about back when he worked for the CIA in Laos and Cambodia. He had an act where he was impersonating me, and that was how his channel. I mean, his channel existed before that. That's how it started to get an audience. He started to do this comedy show. He started to do comedy, news, and drama about what was going on within veganism. And then this other channel, Vegan Cheetah, sometimes it was just the most self-indulgent, ridiculous nonsense. But sometimes he was doing kind of a straight news format about what was going on in the vegan demimonde. So at one point, somebody, and I'm pretty sure I know who this is, made fake hardcore porn images of me, right? And this was reported by Vegan Cheetah deadpan serious, as if the images were real, right? I was busy. I had all this other stuff going on in my life. I have a divorce and a divorce lawyer, custody of my daughter. I'm in China. I'm learning Chinese. I have all this other stuff going on. And I was not offended at all. But it was hilarious in a subtle way to have this guy sitting there saying, in other news, it turns out Aisel Mazard has had another career that hasn't been much discussed or mentioned, as starring in hardcore pornography. And like I think he had a picture up with like black bars concealing some of stuff. It's like, so it seems there's a lot more to this, man, that we don't know. But like it was only funny if you knew that it was unbelievable, like preposterous. And I only Googled the images a couple months after that, I think. I was really just busy with other stuff. And like these images, the guy is like more muscular than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like it's my face, but it's like as a deep fake or something, it's nobody in their right mind could believe this. But my point is I had a very, very broad sense of fair play. I was totally fine with people criticizing me and ridiculing me, and I encouraged it.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have a double standard that way. No, you could ask, have I ever done something as mean to someone else as that fake porn was doing? And that doesn't hurt me. I mean, I'm very comfortable with my sexuality and blah, blah, blah. That particular kind of thing doesn't hurt me. And I honestly wouldn't care if people, even if the images were more believable, if they picked somebody with a body that could be, it really wouldn't hurt me or bother me. The specific situation with Durian Rider at the time was a really famous YouTuber with a huge audience. And he wasn't the first person to go after me and defame me. But he was the first person to deadpan serious claim that I was a pedophile. And the claims were totally incoherent and totally unsubstantiated. Durian Rider now publicly identifies as autistic. He refers to himself as autistic. At that time, I did not know that. And if he had ever said it in a YouTube video, like maybe somewhere it was mentioned briefly in passing, but it wasn't well known. In terms of what I regret, I would have understood the whole situation differently if I really appreciated how mentally disabled Durian Rider is. You see, when you're dealing with someone who's mentally disabled, it's different. Well, I didn't know that at that time. And this was someone with a huge audience. If you combine him and Freely, they were way over 10 million views per month at that time. There's millions and millions. And this was a guy who, in a deadpan serious way, was not just making threats of violence against me and defaming me. He was claiming that I was a pedophile at a time when I was just starting a new job. Oh, sorry, I had signed the contract, but I wasn't about to start the job. You sign the contract and you start the job a number of months later. But I was going to start a job as a university level teacher, university level professor in communist China. So it's like, on the one hand, I've got divorce proceedings and a legal battle for custody of my daughter. For those of you who don't know, visitation is custody. Just visiting your daughter, legally speaking, is a form of custody. So to be able to visit your daughter at all, that's going on right at that time. And I've got this job that I've signed the contract for, but it hasn't begun yet, where I'm working with quote unquote kids. I think they're all over 18 actually.
Yeah.
I taught students in their final year of university, so I don't know if they were 18 or 19. I never asked. But you're in this difficult situation. And as far as I knew at that time, financially, I was flat broke, by the way. I needed the job to survive, as far as I knew. Looking back now, that was also bullshit. But I wasn't as poor as I thought I was. It's kind of another story. But from my perspective, that was a real position of weakness and desperation. So yeah, and I turned to the audience and said, look, if someone doesn't stand up to Durian Ryder and stop this, because he'd done this to several other people before. I wasn't the first person he accused of being a pedophile specifically. And I wasn't the first person he accused of being a sexual criminal, to put it a little bit more broadly. And I wasn't the first person he'd made outrageous denunciations against. This is something that had gone on again and again. And we also didn't assume Durian Ryder was at the end of his career. Now, his career ended because I ended it. My standing up to him really brought about the collapse of his career. And it brought about the collapse of his marriage, too. In case you don't know, he was, common law married to Freely. Yeah. That all happened. It was literally the same day. They broke up. I was there. I saw this happen moment to moment. So he and his girlfriend/wife, again, to my knowledge, they were not legally married, but they were de facto married. They broke up on the same day that he made the denunciations against me. And it's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
So, they broke up and they start tearing each other apart and denouncing each other on the internet and their YouTube careers. There's more than one reason why it's coming to an end, so to speak. But yeah, my point is, this is a tremendously dramatic and passionate situation. However, my regret is this. I don't really think it's about me. And I don't really think it's about Durian Ryder or Freely either. I don't think it's about the 10 million views on YouTube either. I actually think it's about the future of the vegan movement. That for me is really what was worth fighting about, worth talking about. And knowing what I know now, there was a better way to handle the situation. I'll mention this. I've never mentioned this before on the internet anywhere. Actually, several things I've said just now I have mentioned before on the internet. But here's something I've never said before. There was a famous YouTuber at that time called Ali Tabrizi. If you Google this, there are two guys named Ali Tabrizi. One is a bodybuilder, not him. There's a vegan filmmaker called Ali Tabrizi. He had a famous and influential YouTube channel at that time. Now he's trying to be a professional documentary filmmaker, so he deleted all his YouTube stuff. But at that time, he was famous and influential, and he was very much based in London, England, which was a powerful place to be positioned in terms of the other YouTubers, in terms of what was going on politically in the vegan movement. So he was a powerful and influential person. And he got in touch with me right when the iron was hot, right when this conflict was ongoing. And I think I was talking to the lawyer and starting the legal proceedings and stuff. And he said to me, he's not a very articulate guy. He is not a very intelligent guy. But he got in touch with me and he said, look, he talked to Durian Ryder and it's all bullshit. Like, don't worry, don't escalate this. It's all bullshit. And he said it in a completely stupid, unconvincing form. I was like, what do you mean it's all bullshit? Like this is my life. This is what's going on. This is the situation. Yeah. In what sense it's all bullshit? And now looking back, what I could see is, and I've talked to Ali about it since then. He and I are not on speaking terms anymore, which is another interesting story. But he and I didn't talk for several years. And then we got back in touch, tried to rekindle the friendship. And then he got fragile. His ego was too fragile to be friends with me. And we stopped talking again. But, when he got back in touch with me, he said he really wanted to apologize for that and how that went. And I said, well, look, I'm sorry too. I wish you could have gotten through to me, because what you were trying to tell me in saying it's all bullshit, I now understand the sense in which that's true. That Durian Ryder really was and is a mentally disabled person. And he doesn't this situation is not what you think it is. Obviously, it's also not what the audience thinks it is, because I dealt with thousands of people. It'd be hard to estimate how many thousand I've dealt with. Thousands and thousands of people who took Durian Ryder's word as gospel, who thought that there was hard evidence that I was going to be dragged into court for a whole long list of crimes, including, allegedly sex with an underage girl. The two girls he mentioned were both above legal age. There are a whole lot of things about his accusations that didn't make sense if you're just reading them carefully, but people don't read them carefully. And he also made, accusations of financial misconduct against me. There were a whole series of crimes. There's a bunch of things he made up about my background, and things he made up about my relationship with my ex-wife and my mother. And he went after my family. He went after everything. But understanding the man as I do now, understanding also what was going on in the politics of the movement, I totally regret the way I handled it. And also, by the way, I mean, it's just not the topic of this podcast, but you're familiar with a number of countries in Latin America,
yes,
where the legal system is just hopeless.
Yes, it depends how much money you have.
Oh no, let me tell you something. Well, look, I've dealt with
who
France,
you know too.
Look, with France, my mother is a knight in France. My mother is a member of, I forget what it's called, the Order of, the equivalent of the Order of the Garter in France. Yeah. I remember saying to my mother, look, we are not poor, but we cannot get justice in the French legal system for any price. So I'm just saying, you think, like, it's easy to think, oh, if you have enough money. No. Let me tell you, I've got experience with legal systems in 2 countries now, France and Thailand. And understanding the Thai legal system the way I do now, no. Like that. No, I mean, it's like, again, I'm not going to stereotype about all of Latin America, but there are some countries in Latin America where if you want justice, you're better off talking to the mafia than talking to the police. You're better off talking to the mafia.
Well, sometimes they're one and the same.
Well, look, my history with Thailand, I run deep with Thailand, goes way back. And, I was employed by the Thai Museum Service, blah, 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 long story. But I was very much inside the Thai government when I was working in museums in Bangkok, Thailand. And the political situation in Thailand was bad to begin with. But within my lifetime, it has gotten worse. And I guess that's the one positive thing. I now really understand how hopeless the Thai legal system is today.
Let me ask you this.
So yeah, that's another aspect. But if I had known that then, I mean, like the most basic premise of hiring a lawyer and go to court, that's the reality in Thailand. Yeah, go on.
Let me ask you this. Now that you talked about the vegan movement, and this is probably the same in a lot of communities on YouTube. When you think about the vegan movement, you think in general, and I'm not talking about the vegan community, but people looking at from the outside, when they think of the vegan community, think of the vegan cheetah, of Dorian back in the day, right? They're the people getting the attention. They're the people getting these all kinds of views. They're thinking about vegan gains, right? And him talking about, all the things that he talks about that I don't want to say here because he probably get the video taken down. That's who they, identify that community to be. And they're like, no, I don't think I want to, even think about that. No, it's completely unfair, but it's the same thing with everything else.
Again, the book Future of an Illusion. If you hold it sideways, I just want the audience to see how short it is. This is the book costs $1. $1 is in e-text, I think $4 on paper. But it will not take you very long to read that. And it includes a kind of philosophical assessment of exactly the issue you're raising here. And one of the strongest things it says is, vegans imagine that if they put on this freak show, they then attract more positive attention to what the movement is really all about. And they never suspected that when the freak show ends, there is no show at all.
Yes.
That's right. There was this period that got public attention that came and went. It included Freely. It included Durham Rider. It included Vegan Gains, Vegan Cheetah, these over-the-top personalities doing over-the-top things. I would note, though, it also included Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey, several years earlier than all that, did this promotion where she had her whole office go vegan meals for everyone at the Oprah Winfrey headquarters, and they made a whole series. That was for America. That was when the word vegan went mainstream. That lit a spark, lit a fuse. It had a series of hit books and this kind of thing. Today, you can do hardcore porn while, eating hummus off of a vegan salami or whatever. Nobody's going to care. The freak show is over. And now as vegans, we have no show at all. So what I'm talking about in that book ultimately is what now, what next? Like for you as an individual person watching this video, whoever you may be, what now, what next is the ultimate question. But in looking back, there's a moral to that story that applies to many other walks of life, many other things in life.
And the reason I wanted to come back around to that is because we were talking one time about YouTube and the business of YouTube, and you said we're doing all this wrong because there's a sound of a pipe falling on a gym that has like millions of views, right? And there's, you know, and one of my
I saw
daughters
one
showed me
just yesterday, a humidifier. People who want the noise of an old-fashioned humidifier from the 1970s playing in the background because they grew up with it. Millions of views. Go on, yeah.
Yeah, my daughter showed me. She goes, "Oh, look, this channel gets more views than you," and it's literally a lady taking a dump, recording it. That's it. You know,
competition is fierce. You know,
and she gets donations. She gets thousands of views, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Well,
yeah.
If that's the secret, you know, and that's the business of YouTube. Listen, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to put all the links to your stuff below, but I really wanted to end on the topic of video games.
Yeah.
You know, and what you've seen. You featured a few individuals on your channel where you can see the effects on their behavior.
Yeah.
You know, you can see exactly what has happened to these individuals that have failed to develop. I've seen it in real life with my friends, right? Yeah. A lot of them younger, you know, a lot of my older friends don't play anymore, but there's some real negative effects to overdoing it. You know, you can have fun doing YouTube. You can have fun playing video games to a point. There's a point where you exceed a certain time limit or a certain, you know, effort, you know, whatever you want to call it. And then it starts getting into your personal time where you're not growing as an individual.
Yeah.
And you feature a couple of these individuals that there's no difference in their behavior of them now as adults and them as 14 years old. Absolutely not. It's just worse.
Yeah. Well, I think another way of looking at it too is being goal oriented. I did a whole series of videos talking about the incel phenomenon, and there's a lot to say about incels. But one of the misconceptions that I think is now universal. I mean, it's not just Western culture. People who grew up in Saudi Arabia, South Korea, all over the world, they got video games there too. You know, people grow up playing video games in all those cultures all around the world. You know, the idea that all you need to do is push a button. You know, you may not question it, but like, okay, you're sitting there using Tinder or using a dating app, pushing a button with your thumb. And what is the outcome you expect to get? And what are you so angry about that you don't get it? Now, a whole other walk of life that I also have a separate YouTube channel for is studying languages. Mm-hmm. This is how people study languages today. They grow up playing video games. They get a language learning app on their phone. Okay. And then like you're angry. You expect after 6 months or something, you're going to be fluent in this language. Now, I think business is a very different contrast, actually. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's really fucked up about the business world or being an entrepreneur, let's say, to narrow it down a bit, you can be unbelievably successful with zero effort in 6 months. You can. It happens in business. It happens every type of business, even the slowest moving kind of business, you know. And you might even know someone in the same line of work as you who was really successful in 6 months, but not you. You had to work really hard for 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and nothing in our education system prepares you for that. Just mention like with education. So I have a friend who's a nurse. Okay, so everyone goes through this nursing program in the same number of years. Some of them suck at it. Some of them are completely fucking incompetent after 4 years, let's say. But they graduate just the same. And some people, they learn it in just a couple months. They're like, yeah, I'm bored. Yeah, I know how to attach a catheter. Like, come on, why do I have to do this again and again? I know how to give someone a vitamin injection. I got this down the first time you showed me. But they do a lot of repetition because they want you, they want you to be 100% reliable in doing these simple things as a nurse. How to measure the amount of the drug and how to inject it. Okay, so they're going to test you on it again and again. Well, some people pick it up real quick. Some people still suck at the end of the 4-year course, whatever many years it is. And guess what? They all graduate in the same timeline. Business is not like that.
No.
Right? Love is not like that. Like learning a language is not like that. Writing a book is not like that. Guess what, motherfucker? Back when I knew all those people with PhDs, I knew people who could slave away at a manuscript for 10 years and their manuscript sucks compared to the one I wrote in 2 weeks. I was really in that situation with people. Guess what? You can't write for shit. I can't, sorry. You can't do the research, can't do whatever it is. Like, my point is, life gets more unfair once you leave the kind of comfortable garden of the formal education system. And people don't even realize that they're taking that same comfortable garden with them when they have their PlayStation Pocket. You know, they have the PSP in their pants, or you know, they have their Nintendo Switch Lite with them. You know, because that's what it's training you for. You know, Animal Crossing is fair, right? You put in the work, you get there. Think about the economics of Animal Crossing. Guess what, homie? That's not how business works in real. It's a fair and just scoring system. Success and failure in Animal Crossing. I remember even when I was a kid, we had the Elite series of games. That was you were in a spaceship, but you bought and sold things. It was like the stock market in science fiction outer space. It's perfectly fair and equitable, because when we make a simulated world that you're going to compete with others in, like your high score is judged to the same standards, and you get used to this mentality. You push a button, you get the results. So yeah, it's a deeply, deeply corrosive effect, I think, on human development.
Yes,
in terms of what you don't do. That was what you were mentioning, and you're right. I've made all these videos talking about it. What you don't do, like the fact that you're not reading about the history of Napoleon or something. You may be playing a video game about Napoleon. There are plenty. But then on the other hand, also looking forward positively and what your expectations are for the work you put in and what you get out of it.
Well, the biggest, you know, when I speak to people that play a lot of video games about business, this is the one thing that they don't understand: evaluating risk. Right.
Yeah.
So that's really the biggest thing. Is that, you know, I give people this example. I have a friend that can't sing for shit. Can't sing a lick. Right? He thinks he can sing, but he's really good at one thing, right? And he makes a lot of money with that thing. And what does he do with that? He takes that money and he goes rents out a bar.
He goes to the studio. Go on.
No, he rents out a bar and he throws a gig. Right? It's not really a gig because he's not paying. You know, nobody's paying him. He's paying. Right? People come in. He gets to be the star of the show. Nobody else can sing because, you know, he's paying for everything. He pays all the musicians and what have you, and then he goes on. And then I know another friend who's way more talented that doesn't play in front of any people unless he stands out on the street and plays a guitar with an open can, hoping that people drop change, right?
Yeah.
But he's really good at other things, like cooking, for example, but he won't do it.
He's a devoted artist.
Exactly. So it's like, dude, you could do both. You know, you can do both. You're an effortlessly musician. This guy can't sing for shit, but he's out there playing every Saturday. He's living the life that you want. And the only difference is that he's got money and you don't. And you have the ability to make money in less time and you don't do it because you're just dedicated to the work. You're not evaluating the risk of not, you know, generating income in some way.
I think both of the examples you've given of these two musicians, though, are kind of wrong. They're negative examples. I don't mean that you're wrong in raising them, because, you know, I don't write a book for the sake of the paper I'm writing on. You know, I'm writing it for an audience. I'm writing it for people. You've got to make music for an audience, for listeners. So again, something I've never mentioned on my channel before. I have many, many half brothers. My father had 9 kids. I'm the youngest of 9. One of my half brothers was a career musician. And in terms of just the playing of the guitar, in my inexpert opinion, tremendously talented and able. I'm not an expert. And he's one of those guys who could switch between doing Spanish guitar, classical guitar, like he could do Bach and Beethoven or whatever. And he could, and his main thing was heavy metal. That was his own personal passion. Okay. He has never had a single song on YouTube with as many views as the first song I ever recorded on YouTube. But I've now made 3 songs. My most recent one is now about 5,500 views. And I know this is going to sound ridiculous to you guys, but I hear back from people, the songs I've made, they really mean something to people. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. And I know why. I know who my audience is. I know what they're connected. You know what I mean? There's something going that way. But are you making music for a listener? Are you writing a book for a reader? Because the 2 examples you've given, it doesn't matter how good you are at singing. You know, it doesn't matter how good you are at the various technical aspects of this, right? Like, it's got to be a relationship between performer and audience. Otherwise, it's by definition self-indulgent. You know, so that's what I'd say. Whether you're rich or poor, whether you're doing it on a street corner, as a street corner, I'm sorry, you're noise pollution. Nobody asked to hear your song. That's the tragedy of it. I mean, it's sad.
Yeah.
Even if you're really great, nobody asked to hear this. And if you're paying, I know that kind of pay to play situation, very common.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, the example I give to him is sometimes you get a gift that you don't know why you have it, but you do it better than anybody else. I have an addictive personality, right? I'm kind of compulsive. And the job that I have really is, it really matches well with my personality. I can go into work and do my job every day skipping because it's just fun, right? I can do it as a hobby. Like I would do my job as a hobby just because I have this particular talent, which is to most people like doing homework. Most people would hate my job, right? But it's that job that allows me to do other things that I'm passionate about, right? If I just did, what I'm passionate about, I'd still be in Bangkok probably. In a street alley somewhere. But I don't know where the middle is. That's the journey, right? We're all discovering and trying to get better every day and trying to learn. And that's one of the things I've discovered with with your channel is that you're not afraid to put ideas out there that are going to go against the grain, but might have the effect of making people think and reconsider their point of view. And I find that very valuable.
Well, I would just say, sorry, this is a good note to close on if you want to wrap it up. We're past an hour. But, I don't encourage anyone to pursue the middle. I don't encourage moderation or balance in anything. Now, some of you are going to think, oh, he means cocaine. Well,
I can't achieve the middle on that. I can tell you that.
Right. But I don't encourage people to engage in moderate alcohol drinking. I preach 100% sobriety, 100% abstinence, which is how I live. I don't tell you to be moderate about eating meat. 100% veganism. I'm an extremist on everything. And a friend of mine just earlier today, a female friend of mine, said to me, look, you've got to get out and start taking some risks. You've got to change your life in some right ways. And I said to her, I've run out of risks to take. Like there was a time when, I moved to Cambodia, started a whole new life. I moved to Saskatchewan, started studying Korean and Ojibwe, a whole new life. Every stage, it was like total commitment, highest possible risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I said to her, what do you want? Do you want me to move to Tokyo? Like what would be, I can, you know what I mean? I'm not risk averse. But yeah, the thing I'd say is this: if you just break down my viewers into two types of people, young and old, to the young people, I say, look, you got to get out and take the risk now when you're young. Like I said this openly to people, including my professors, including my parents. I said, look, if I'm going to go to Laos and risk stepping on a landmine, do you want me to wait till I'm in my 60s to step on a landmine? I got to do it now. I got to go out and do the research. I got to go have this experience while I'm still young and strong. So, on the one hand, you say to young people, no, so what is, if you're talking about the middle or moderation, well, what would the most extreme option be? To quote Homestar Runner, everybody to the limit. What if you took it to the limit? What if you went as far with it as you could possibly fucking go? What then? Let's at least think that all the way through, But then on the other hand, when you're talking to old people, it's like, what are you, a fucking coward? So what do you got to, well, you're going to live forever? So like if you're 55, are you afraid to go to Ukraine right now? Like if you want to make YouTube videos about what's happening in Kiev, what's stopping you from buying the airplane ticket? Like, okay, your skin is so precious at 55. You don't want to come back with a few more scars on it? Really? Really? Is it going to be sad for you if you die without seeing 56? If you don't see iPhone 15 come out, you're going to be full of, really? So it's funny, but like both for young and old. And whether we're talking about the life of an artist, of an author, of a creative person, or if we're talking about politics, in this sense, I never endorse moderation. I never talk about balance. I never talk about equilibrium. And this is the most important part. When you think things through to their extreme that way, okay, what if I was all the way committed and I took it to its limits, took it to extremes? Sometimes just in thinking that through and doing the research, you're going to realize that this isn't worth doing at all. You're going to realize like going to Ukraine isn't worth doing at all, or going to Cambodia isn't. But you really thought it through seriously, not as a hobby, not as something for time. So that's also, I think that's part of the process of
if you have a passion, you have to definitely go.
Go on,
Yeah, if you have a passion, you definitely want to go 100% on it, or just don't do it at all, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's really the commitment. If you truly love it, and then you have to ask yourself that question: do I really want to do it, or just or I
Well,
don't, right?
and look, this is also very alien to Americans, Canadians, and British, the English. You know, of course, you have to think through what if you fail. You know, what percentage of guitarists fail? You know, you want to be
high
like
percentage,
if whatever it is. Okay, you know, think that through too. What if you go to Ukraine and you try to make a documentary about the war, and everyone thinks you're a moron? Like your documentary is a flop, and it discredits you. You look like an idiot. You know, whatever, you know, that kind of like think through the failures, think through all that stuff.
That's a treasure of youth, right? Like when I was younger, I was very impetuous, right? And even older, you know, people would describe me that way. I've done things that probably wouldn't be recommendable for,
Right.
you know, 90% of the population. My problem is I never had a bad time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I could never identify with these people that had issues with drugs or alcohol, because
Right.
that was never my experience. You know, it really wasn't. I did it, and, you know, I came back. You know, I got hung over a few times, you know, I had some bad experiences, but overall it was okay, you know, but that's
Yeah.
not everybody's experience. But if I had to look back on it, you know, do I regret going to Bangkok? Do I regret going to all these places? Do I, you know, regret traveling with $10 in my pocket? No, absolutely not.
Right.
You know, looking back. But if I had to assess the risk now as a 50-plus-year-old man,
Yeah.
it'd be a little different.
You know, when you're asking yourself the question, is this worth doing? Because, by the way, guys, if right now, if you go to Kiev, 99% of you won't get hurt in any way. I mean, the actual risk of being in Kiev right now is not that great. You know, I just say it's not, you're really not putting your head on the chopping block or something by going to Kiev and trying to make YouTube videos. But just to give an example, somewhere there's some risk. But, you know, even, sorry, this is one you may relate to. I remember I was looking at going to a university in Mexico City as a student, not as a professor. You know, I remember people saying, "What are you crazy? Do you know how dangerous Mexico City?" People really live that way. People are afraid to go to Compton. People are afraid to go to Mexico City. You know, like the way in which, you know, life becomes narrow and dull.
Yes.
Life gets trite, as I said.
You know, I mean,
yeah,
you
you've
can
got to
play.
challenge that and think it through. Like if you have a good enough reason to go to Mexico City, you know what I mean? Of course you're going to risk your life. It's not that much, but you know what I mean? But is it? Or is this bullshit? Or do you really not have that good a reason to go to Mexico City? You know, that's all I'm saying. Go on, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the Switch and portable handhelds travel, right? That's the reason they're there. You know, I love playing the Switch on a plane, right? I mean, but a lot of these people, like you said, they're afraid. Yeah. They're afraid to change. They're afraid to do something new and not think it through.
And I think they're afraid to admit to themselves that there's a better person they could be today if they'd made that change earlier. If they hadn't
that's the theme of your channel that I think is something that people should discover. Where can people find you? What are you working on now?
I don't know. Oh, let's do another 1 hour. What am I doing now? What am I doing next? So look, both of those books, Future of an Illusion and No More Manifestos, one of the answers they give you for the road ahead, for what you can do with the rest of your life. Ask the question, how are you going to change the world as a powerless person? I'm assuming my reader is not Bill Gates. I'm assuming my reader is not Joe Biden. Okay, let's assume you're basically a powerless, penniless person. What are you going to do to change the world? What is there that you can do? I think a huge part of the answer is being a creative artist. And one of my viewers, he's really young. I think he's about 19. He was reading that part of the book. He said, look, can you give me an example of what you're talking about here? You know, someone who really changed the world as creative artist. I said, sure, Walt Disney. Like not the company, the man.
Yeah, the man.
You look at the life of Walt Disney and the tremendous impact he's had on the history of Western civilization and every other civilization. People in Hong Kong and Taiwan all grew up watching Walt. People in Japan, they have Disneyland in Japan too, you know. The enormity of his accomplishment. And, you know, this is going to sound like a weird comparison. Who do you think has been more influential in the world's history, Walt Disney or Adolf Hitler? They were alive about the same time. You know, like I know your high school history textbook is going to spend more time talking.
Well, I mean, are the rumors true? One was fan of the other.
you know, but my point is this: if you are basically a kind of poor and powerless person, what is it that you can do to change the world? Both of those books have a lot of reflection on that. And for me, partly because I'm getting old and ugly, it seems like most likely the way forward for me is comedy, is satire, because you can be old and ugly and still work in comedy. I could do hardcore porn. I admit it's an option, you know. But
got a video out there already.
I'm now looking at a way forward as a creative artist that way.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah. I mean, so life has gotten unpredictable. And if you've been watching my YouTube channel, just look at the last 5 videos. It's gotten real unpredictable for the audience too. And I just say, you know, like I made one video I'm very proud of, where for about the first 70%, you think it's just a bunch of jokes about my sex life. But then it twists and it starts making some really serious, hard-hitting jokes about Joe Biden and international politics and foreign policy. And I really, you don't see it coming. Yeah. And I was so proud of that video because let me tell you, doing comedy, doing satire about Joe Biden, it's fucking impossible. It's really hard. I mean, Donald Trump is easy to make fun of. It's easy to make jokes about Donald Trump. But, you know, to really do comedy humor about Joe Biden, that's very challenging. So yeah, that is challenging me to grow, you know, in a certain way. But you know, the big thing I'm dealing with is the death of the publishing industry. It would be much easier for me to write novels. I was looking longingly at Conan the Barbarian, the collected stories, the original stories, Conan the Barbarian. I wish I could change the world by writing fiction like Conan the Barbarian. In what sense? Fiction that's entertaining. It's mainstream, it has action and romance and comedy, but that also has some kind of philosophical element that means something to the audience. I would love to do that.
You might have an opportunity. Let me tell you what, why. Elon Musk is looking to monetize not only videos, but also publishing.
Yeah.
So your articles, you can write short stories, you can do different type of things and monetize it on Twitter. So that might be a way to go.
Well, okay, maybe this is a good note to end on, maybe not. But, you know, we're in an era now when reading a book is a lagging indicator. Now, you should start a collection of books by YouTubers. But who reads a book written by The Amazing Atheist? Who reads a book written by Anissian? Who reads a book written by me? It's people who've already heard my voice, or they have some connection. They're like, okay, I care about this guy enough. Now I want to hear what he has to say about politics or philosophy or about his own life, about his autobiography. That is very much the era we're living in. And to anyone watching this video, rich or poor, young or old, the days in which you could write a book that would have the reverse effect. People read your book and now they're interested in you. Now they're coming to your YouTube channel because they read your book. That's over. So yeah, I'm very, very leery about that.
Yeah, you would have to go on to, you know, if you're writing vegan books, I mean, the way you do it in YouTube now is you have to go to a channel like the Barbecue Pit Boys and go tell them how their whole philosophy in life is wrong, right? And criticize them deeply, and then people rush to your channel because you just insulted their idol. That's what people are doing now. That's the only way, right? Controversy sells, and that's you know.
Look, there's a question of the threshold for the audience. How much do you have to care about something to click on a video and listen for 2 minutes? Because a huge percentage of the audience only listens for 2 minutes, whether the video is 20 minutes long or an hour long or 5 minutes long. How much do you have to care? Okay, now how much do you have to care to actually buy a book, even if the book is free, to spend several hours reading a book? It's very time consuming reading a book. So, you know, the threshold there, I was going to compare that. You mentioned before this musician who pays to play, a musician who pays to do a gig.
Yes.
You can never do that with books. You can never pay people. You can give people a free copy of your book. You can't pay them enough to get them to actually read your book. People really have to care. So there's a big.
It has to be an audio book.
Even if I write something like Conan the Barbarian, something that obviously has entertainment value, there's a big threshold for me to overcome.
Yeah. I know audiobooks are probably what I see people doing now the most, and what people pump out the most. But you know, I have no idea.
I'll just tell you, when you look at the numbers, even comic books are dead. DC and Marvel are publishing comic books that sell 5,000, 8,000 copies in a month.
Yeah.
So
but in the
I just say I don't believe it. I think audiobooks are a sideshow to a dying industry.
Well, I mean, if you give people what they want, look at what just happened with the Rippaverse right now. The guy raised $3 million for a non-woke comic book.
Yeah.
Right. He just, if you hit that, like we were talking about right now, there's other people that are probably more talented. They have, more, they're better at drawing, whatever the hell it is. But this guy has the one thing. Look,
politics is what it's called.
This guy is always going to have a dick. He's never going to cut it off. I'm never going to make him any other gender than what it is right here, and I'll introduce the different characters as they are, and they're going to stay like that forever, right? Continuity.
Yeah.
With politics, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no. I mean, that was an example of something. I mean, look, it's exactly what interests me is the overlap between art and politics.
Yeah. And you just have to do it once. You figure it this way. I mean, and coming around to Tommy Tallarico, right? You only have to do it once. If you hit $3 million, and let's just say you get to keep the $3 million.
I think Tommy did. Edgy theory, guys. I think he held on.
Edgy theory, but if you get to keep the $3 million, you put them to rest at 10%. That's it. You don't have to do shit. You just let that thing grow over time, and you just live your life as you want to, and that'll finance everything else. You just have to be right one time. All right. Thank you for so much.
I don't see it that way. I think the minimum budget for a small independent film is now well over $15 million. I think very few of those films will put $3 million in your pocket.
Oh no,
so I'm talking
about other. I'm not talking about films. I'm talking about other grifts. But yeah.
Well, Tommy Tallarico also showed you that you can have $16 million and it's not enough to develop a new game of cornhole. Software development costs. Maybe not quite as high as mainstream cinema, but it's up there. So
I have an Xbox. I have an Xbox, but it's no cornhole. I can tell you that.
Cornhole free Xbox.
New videos every Monday and Sunday. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Gen X Gamer. Remember to like and subscribe, click that notification bell, and remember, never ever be afraid to be happy. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.